I think we're live. My name is Jamie J. I'm the CEO and founder of Bottleneck Distant Assistance. This is Live with Bottleneck, where we help stop the bottleneck in your business by inviting amazing people on board, like our guest today, Matthew Turner. And I think the first time I chatted with Matthew was about, I think, almost 5 years ago. It seems like maybe 4 years ago. I actually, you know what? I should have taken the time and gone back and look at the exact episode. Even though I don't do that podcast anymore, it's still live. So it's amazing to see what he's done from then until now, multi-time author and just unbelievable. He's had a child in that time, and I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff has been happening all the way across the lake in England there. So we're going to be chatting with him pretty soon. But before we do, I'm going to go ahead and get us into this, and we'll start kicking this thing off. If you have any questions, please, at any time, whether you're on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, ask away, and we'll talk to you soon. So let me see if I can get this going here for us, and yeah, we'll get this thing kicked off. Stay tuned. Okay, so this is what's happening. I have the wrong starting and stopping intro, so I'm just going to jump into this now, and we'll get going on it. We're in the midst of changing our branding, so you're going to have to apologize with us and stick around because content's still going to be good. Just next time. We all make mistakes, right? So without any further ado, I'm going to talk about how to escape the hustle with Matthew Turner, author of Beyond the Pale, a fable about escaping the hustle and finding yourself. Now, Matthew is a British author who lives in a small town in Yorkshire, England. Having previously published 3 novels and a nonfiction business book, he wrote Beyond the Pale on the back of interviewing hundreds of successful entrepreneurs, authors, investors, and thought leaders, gaining a unique insight into areas such as mindset, flow, and personal development, and a gaining reputation for crafting compelling stories out of other people's lives. Matthew builds relatable fables for those looking to live a meaningful and purpose-driven life. As well as writing for himself, Matthew ghostwrites both articles and books for other successful entrepreneurs and thought leaders in between spending time with his 2 children. So without any further ado, please allow me to welcome Mr. Matthew Turner. How are you, sir?
Jamie, so good. Oh, I love seeing it. I'm just gonna, there we go. We can book twins. Book high five. It's so amazing to see the book there out in the wild. I mean, at the recording of this, it's not like had its official release yet, but already I'm getting like pictures from people, the advanced copies, and yeah, it's amazing. And yes, great to be back with you.
It's so awesome. When I started going through this, and I always like your acknowledgments, right? I always like them. I'm going through and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at all the people. There's Ari Meisel, Dory Clark. I mean, it's just amazing. The type of people that you're getting to look at this thing. But before we get into the book too much, because I really enjoyed this, you have such a gift of just a gab, and the way that you explain things, it's like, man, it's so proper, and it's just amazing how you dig into that. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit of a background and how, how this kind of formed and how you got to today.
Absolutely, and I'm going to do so hopefully without melting. We're in the middle of a heat wave here in England. We're not used to it. It's lovely, but like my English body feels like it's going to burst into like the Human Torch. I may fly off.
No rain for a while.
No rain for about 10 days, and it's crazy because beforehand we had like a lot of rain, so it just went from one extreme to the other. So I'm trying not to complain though, because I like the sun, I like the heat. My body's just struggling. But yes, it's been an incredible journey. I mean, you mentioned it yourself. It was probably 6 or 7 years ago when we first met. I remember appearing on your previous podcast, probably like say 4 or 5 years ago, around launch of my last book, The Success Mistake. And the last 5 years have just flown by. And one of the big reasons for that is that I had my daughter, Imogen, who's now 3.5. And so it's around about 4 years ago now that we learned about Imogen. She was coming into the world. And at the similar time, I had this idea of what eventually became Beyond the Pale, this book right here. I've always had this, I suppose, an ambition to bring my passion for writing both fiction and nonfiction together. And I never knew really how to do it, but I was inspired by books like The Alchemist. And it's hard to say exactly when it clicked. It was an organic process. It was something that just drip fed into me over the course of a couple of months. But then I just came up with this idea of Ferdinand, this very successful Silicon Valley entrepreneur who on the outside seems to have it all: fame, fortune, good looks, youth, everything. And on the inside, he feels that he should be happy. But then something happens in the book where he starts to question, actually, what am I doing? Am I happy? Am I, striving towards something meaningful? And I was going through a lot of these thoughts myself before learning that Imogen was coming into the world. I was just going through a bit of a transition through different kind of work and a few other things. And I was just starting to kind of question my role in business, what I wanted to do moving forward. I'd started going out with Imogen's mother, and it was my first real relationship in a very long time. So I was just going through a lot of transitions, a lot of questions going in my mind. And I came up with this idea. And it was a loose idea, which was then cemented once I found out about Imogen, because it just forced me to look at life in a completely new way. I had to realize a way to work a lot less and earn a lot more in a short period of time, over just a couple of months. And it really kind of helped me realize my role in hustle, like what actually the hustle is. So it's strange to think that without Imogen, this book would still have happened, but the premise and the story and the journey Ferdinand takes would be so different. Like the overall idea was the same, but the thread that kind of brings it all together, Imogen played such a role in that. Wow. So it was one of those things where, although it's not a memoir, it's not really about me in any sense, a lot of the questions Ferdinand has, a lot of the things that he goes through were things I were going through pre-Imogen, and then especially when she came onto the scene. And yeah, it's just been a whirlwind 4 years since. And I'm so proud to be now on the cusp of it being published. Yeah, that's right. There it is, and front and center, right?
That's amazing.
To George and Imogen, my inspiration always.
Yeah.
So hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight into how it all came about.
Yeah, I love it. It's I just give it up to you, man. Not only once, twice, 3, 4 times, 5 times writing, but the process is absolutely amazing. Very rewarding, I would assume, for you, having accomplished all of this. Very challenging. You strike me as a person that loves the challenge. How do you? What's motivating you to get this one out in particular?
So it's a bit of a strange one. When it comes to my personal writing, I've always had like this internal drive to just get stories out there. I find it therapeutic. A lot of my books, even though the characters will be very different to me, a lot of the things that they go through, they're just things I have on my mind. They're pains that I personally feel. So it's just a way for me to go through the process, better understand it. And that's kind of like always been the internal motivation. But before Beyond the Pale, I put a lot of pressure on myself because I really wanted it to become like my main income stream. I really wanted it to become like my thing. With Beyond the Pale, I just took a step back. And again, part of this was down to Imogen. It forced me to build a more sustainable and progressive income stream with my ghostwriting, with my client work. it just allowed me, it freed me up to just see beyond the pale as this is just something I need to get out. It's a personal need. It's a desire, whether it sells 10 copies or 10 million copies, it's fine. You know, the process will be the process. I'm going to take my time. I'm going to enjoy it. This is a story I want to get out into the world. It's a story I want to write. It's a story I believe is going to impact people. And I'm going to commit to the process. And I'm going to commit, but obviously, to the writing and to the editing and the publishing. I'm going to step outside my comfort zone. This one's traditionally published compared to my previous ones, which were self-published. And I'm just going to continue to commit to this book and the two that come after it, because it's forms parts of a trilogy. And my big overarching mission for this book, and I came up with this, probably about 4 years ago now, is I hope to impact with this book and the books that come afterwards 100 million lives over the next 150 years. So I'm just taking away the pressure. This doesn't have to be a success on launch day. This doesn't have to sell X amount of copies in year one. I want it to become a true perennial seller. I want it to be a book that is passed down from, father to son or mother to daughter or whatever. Yeah, just be one of those books that outlasts me.
Fantastic.
If it does or doesn't happen, it doesn't really matter. But that's kind of how I've approached it, to just really to kind of take the pressure, just give myself to this book. If it took a year to write or 4 years, I was like, it's fine. It'll come out when it comes out. If it has a really successful first year or not, that's fine. If it's something that builds momentum over time, that's fine. I'm committed to this. This is a big part of me now. Like, this book plays a huge part of my life, huge part of my spirit. It's just inside of me, and I'm going to continue to commit to this in the next 2 books. And I'm lucky and fortunate in a sense that I've built a sustainable and ever-growing sort of business that extends from my own personal writing. The goal is still to be that kind of self-sustaining author writer myself, where I can pick and choose who I work with on clients. But whether that takes a year or 5 years or 10 years, I'm just chill these days. I'm like, it'll be fine. I've got these beautiful stories in my mind. I want to get them out, and I believe they'll change lives and impact lives. And that's been the motivation. And that's the motivation while I was writing it. It's motivation now, as I'm on the cusp of publishing it in just a few weeks' time. And it's going to be the motivation 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing, Matthew. Congratulations again. You said impact 4 times. When you say impact someone's life, in which way do you hope you impact their life?
So with this specific book and the related books that come with it, it's not to provide any answers per se. It's to start asking the right questions. And one of the people I interviewed for the book, Kamal Ravikant, he actually tore me apart when I was doing my interview. I was really nervous. I'm a big fan of his writing. Kamal Ravikant.
Oh, okay.
So fantastic author. He's an investor too. He's Naval Ravikant's younger brother, who's obviously very big into the personal space and many other areas too. And I asked her, I forget the question exactly, but he just kind of stopped me and went, that's a bad question. It's too broad. You want me to give you a specific answer, but you're asking me this really broad question. Like, ask a better question. Ask a specific question. And it was just this off-the-cuff comment that forced me in the moment to ask a real specific question to him, but it's one that stuck with me since and played a large role as I continued to write the book, because I realized, without even knowing it at the time, but in the beginning of a book, and even in the middle of a book, as Ferdinand's in the middle of his journey, he's just sending out these broad questions, sometimes asking people questions, but other times in a more indirect way. He's just spewing out these broad questions to the world with an expectation that someone or something is going to provide him with the answer, the specific answer. And I realize I do that. And I realize most of us do that. We have these problems, we have these pains, we struggle to really dive in and focus on what they are, what the root cause is. So to avoid that and to preoccupy ourselves, we distract ourselves with this, that, and the other. And we just send out these random, broad, blanket questions with an expectation that at some point we're going to be given the answer, a specific answer to solve everything. And when you look at it like that, it's irrational, it's illogical, it's stupid. So what I really hope this book does is just opens people's eyes, and it's a story I hope people can relate. They're going to struggle, most people, to relate with Ferdinand because he's a vastly rich and famous individual. But whether you're making $1 million or $100,000 or it's relative. Yeah, you can seem happy, you can seem successful, you can kid yourself into believing all these things, but you need to tap in what's actually going on inside. You need to ask yourself, like, what questions am I asking? What am I actually searching for? Like, what am I striving toward? What is my definition of success? What is the definition of a meaningful, purposeful, impactful life to me, rather than just following what other people do? So I hope that it inspires people and impacts them in a sense of them going, okay, I need to start asking a specific question. I need to search for what that question is, because until I find that question, the answer is unattainable. So rather than people pursuing answers, I think they need to spend their time pursuing the question, the right questions.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So you're, in essence, your life, meaning the reader's life, the reader can see their life through the lens of Ferdinand in some way, shape, or form, and follow along this journey. And while reading, you're kind of able to perhaps insert yourself into the story at certain times.
Well, that's the beauty of a fable. I mean, anyone who doesn't know what a fable is, it's kind of like this mix between fiction and non-fiction. It's fiction in the sense that it's purely designed to entertain and allow you to escape. But where a lot of novels and fiction falls short is there isn't always a point per se. There isn't always some kind of education or enlightenment. There might be a hidden meaning there, but it's not particularly obvious. But then you've got non-fiction books, which are very much designed to enlighten or educate. Don't usually do as good a job of entertaining and allowing you to escape. So a fable is just a proven way to teach in a really immersive form. I mean, fables and parables have been used in religion and spiritual texts for millennia. And some of the greatest, most impactful books out there, books like The Alchemist, which I mentioned earlier, is one like it. And as you read The Alchemist, you find yourself, I mean, I have yet to speak to anyone who's read The Alchemist and doesn't lean in to Santiago's journey. They find some way to relate with him. Not necessarily his physical journey, his actual literal journey, but some of the questions that he has, some of those doubts, some of those assumptions. And that's the power of a fable. It kind of eases you into enlightenment without trying to drum it down your face. And it says, you don't need to learn this specific thing in this specific way, but just take a step back, see how this relates to you, see what triggers you, and then go in search of that, go down that rabbit hole.
So did you do any research, like heavy research on this, or is this part of just ideas and then elaborating on ideas?
In some sense, I did a lot of research, because even though they're two very different books, and someone would read one and then the other and be like, I don't see how these two link. For me, in my personal journey over the last 7 or 8 years, they're very closely interlinked. And it leads us to the book, which I was last on your show to promote, The Successful Mistake. And for that, I interviewed 160 odd entrepreneurs and authors and thought leaders and stuff about failure and mistakes and what they learned from that and how they managed to transform some kind of failing into success, whether that's personal success or business. So researching that book, doing all those interviews, writing the actual book itself, doing the course that accompanied the book, it all kind of led me down the personal development rabbit hole. I started learning about mindset and flow, and I just started to learn more and more on my own. and I would put it into the course, and I'd put it into articles and other things. So I didn't actually have to do that much research for Beyond the Pale, because I'd been inadvertently inspiring myself and fueling the fire for the previous 5 or 6 years with all these stories, with all these anecdotes, with all these books I'd read, and all these courses and lessons that I'd created. So I interviewed around about 10 people for the book and inserted their actual characters into the book. So someone like Kamal, for instance, features in the story. He meets Ferdinand. So I did a little bit of research in there where I was able to speak to someone and have them expand on their expertise and bring things to life. But honestly, a lot of the stuff which I would otherwise have to research had just become like an obsession in the years prior. So kind of, but kind of not.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting. So one of the things, and by all means, you do not have to do this. But, however, I've talked with you several times before, and as I illustrated when we first jumped on, I love the way you talk. I love the way you explain things, not just the accent, but the way that you put your sentences together, right? Like it's you have a very unique way of sharing a story. And so while you do not have to do this, but as I was reading through part of the book, I'm wondering how Matthew would say this. I wonder how Matthew would read this. And I'm wondering, just out of curiosity, and there's one of my favorites. Let me see. It's not there. I think it's 10. 10 starts off with kind of like a neat little story. I think it's 10. Yes. Contolo's boardroom, San Francisco. And maybe just the first 2 paragraphs. Because if possible, unless you have a better spot that you think you can read from, but this one is the second it said my chair creaks, I'm like, oh, that's Matthew Turner 100%. I'm reading. So I wonder if maybe you could do that, and like I'd love it.
Okay, I can do that. So like the opening sort of paragraph.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, this is from chapter 10, Contolo's boardroom, San Francisco. My chair creaks as I rock gently back and forth. I'm alone, though. Only moments ago, I occupied this room alongside the other 9 men who make up Contolo's board. There was a time when it was just me, but then more men, all older than me, most white and grey, suited with ties and polished shoes, entered the room. The boardroom table grew longer and more expensive while the chairs became less comfortable. I look around. Everything is white and clean. White walls and white cabinets, glossy and reflective. If I were to break down my personality into a room, would this be it? How much of me is in here? Only the wall to my right feels all personal. My friend Will created the mural that fills the entire space. I recall his ideas and how I loved them. But as more of the board heard more of his plans, the less of his liberal vision made it onto his canvas.
See, now I read that a completely different way, but I'm like, man, this is all like, it's so amazing how you painted the picture there with those words, and I can totally imagine what that would be like. It was fantastic.
Yeah, and it's an interesting part of the story because Ferdinand is just starting to have his awakening. He's starting to, peel a couple of layers and question, like, what have I been doing the last couple of years? I've been making all this money. I've, on the outside looking in, seemed like the most successful guy in Silicon Valley. But to what expense? Like, what has it taken from me? And he starts to question how much of him is still in his business, how much of that original vision is still there. Are they still pursuing that original vision? And he starts to just look around himself. He sees it in the board. It's become just a bunch of old white men. No, they're not the same age. There's no variety. There's no anything. It's just all so vanilla. The room is vanilla. His company that he poured his heart and soul into, he created from nothing, has just become vanilla. And it starts to trigger something inside, and he starts to realize, I can't do this. So shortly after he begins his quest, if you will.
Well, that's so fantastic. That's amazing. Well, we are getting towards the end of the half hour, but I do, before we wrap up, I want to say thank you for writing this, Matthew Turner. This is called Beyond the Pale, a fable about escaping the hustle and finding yourself. And what I want to do is I want to give a copy of one of this away. Just contact me or comment here, and I'll send you this. However, please read this and leave a review. Leave a review when we get to it. When do people get a chance to buy the book?
So it's available as an ebook right now. And it's available to pre-order as a paper book, which ships on the 24th of August. A couple of weeks later here in the UK, I think it's around about the 9th of September. So yeah, we're very close, about a month away from the official launch, its birthday, if you will. But you can go on Amazon now and get the ebook, pre-order the paperback, hopefully an audio book in the not too distant future. So yeah, all those details are at beyondthebook.co.
That's fantastic. Well, I want to send somebody a copy of this. We'll send this off to you. Please do yourself a service and read this book and leave a review to help Matthew out so that he can start on his way of affecting or impacting a lot of people, even past his lifetime. So yeah, Matthew, anything else that you want to share about the book?
No, I mean, anyone who has any questions, if you go to beyondbook.co, you'll find my Facebook and Instagram. Send them to me. I'm an open book in that sense, so always keen to answer any questions or anything like that. So if you've got any questions, fire them my way. And if you do read the book, as Jamie says, leave a review. They are quite literally an author's best friend. Even if you just leave like a 1 or 2 star, I still learn from that. So yeah. Enjoy and review.
Oh man, Matthew, it's so good connecting with you again. Congratulations on this. Please reach out to me if I can support you in any way the day of. I'm happy to do so. Thank you so much for sending me along copy. I'm so excited to support you on this. Congratulations. What an honor.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure and very much appreciate the support.
Thanks, Matthew. Can you hold on 1 second and I'll wrap up?
I can indeed.
Oh, thank you so much. All right. I've been talking with Matthew Turner. Beyond the Pale. Beyond the Pale. There's Matthew Turner. MATTHEWTUNER. A fable about escaping the hustle and finding yourself. I cannot recommend this book enough. You're going to love it. And thankfully, we got a sample of a reading from Matthew, so you can kind of hear from his perspective how he reads through this thing. And I couldn't wait to ask him to do that. So super honored. So Matthew Turner, he's the author of Beyond the Pale, a fable about escaping the hustle. By all means, go check this book out, How to Escape the Hustle, which ironically is a nice little fit to, if you missed last episode, we talked to Milena Regos, who is the founder of Unhustle, and we talked about like an unhustle movement going on now with Matthew Turner. And coming soon to your earbuds is Matt Kubler. He's a speaker, mentor, police officer, and podcast host of I Got You. And we're going to be talking about living a life of selfless service. That is next Tuesday, July 27th at 2 p.m. Central. So definitely join us then. We'd love to see you there. And I'm putting my book out there. There's no cover yet. This is not the cover. Quit repeating yourself. It's coming out August 31st is the publication date. So I'm really excited about that. And I have mad respect for Matthew Turner and all those authors out there. So without any further ado, let me go ahead and wrap up today. Remember, don't forget, create your own ripple. Special thanks to Matthew Turner, author of Beyond the Pale. And you can look more by going to, what is it? It's I want to post it one more time here just to make sure, beyondbook.co, beyondbook.co, to go check it out. And yeah, we'll see you later.